There's a way to do something terrible and never get caught. I know because I helped create the perfect scenario without realizing it. A house designed to keep everyone safe became a trap, and the person responsible never had to run, because they never left. My name is Arthur, and for 12 years I was in charge of security at Beatrice Mansion. I installed every lock, every sensor, every system that guaranteed total protection. The house was impenetrable. Nothing bad could get in. But here's the problem. I was so worried about what was outside that I never thought about what was already inside. And when I realized my mistake, it was too late. Tuesday, 6:30 in the morning. The sun had barely risen when the maid Carmen knocked on my door. Her face was pale, hands shaking. Mrs. Beatrice wasn't responding. That alone wasn't alarming. Beatrice was 73 years old and valued her privacy above everything. But it was 8 o'clock, then 9. Her routine was precise as a Swiss watch. Coffee at 7 sharp, always. At 9:30, I made the decision. I went to her bedroom door on the 2nd floor, knocked. Nothing. Knocked harder. Silence. Tried the handle. Locked. Of course it was locked. Those doors were armored, with internal locks that could only be opened by whoever was inside. I had supervised the installation 3 years ago myself, after Beatrice became paranoid about invasions. I called the others. Raphael, the oldest son, arrived first, always serious, always calculating. He inherited his father's business and treated everything like a transaction. Then came Livia, the middle daughter, the one who always had a complicated relationship with her mother. And lastly, Pedro, the youngest, Beatrice's favorite, though she never admitted it out loud. Beatrice's personal secretary, Helena, was also there. She had worked for the family for 15 years, knew every secret, every document, every financial movement. Raphael took charge. He always did. Shouted his mother's name. Nothing. Looked at me and said just one word. Break it down. I brought 3 men from the maintenance crew and an industrial crowbar. That door was monstrous. It took us 20 minutes breaking the hinges. When we finally got in, what we saw made no sense at all. The room was perfect, nothing out of place. Curtains closed, bed made, books on the nightstand organized. And Beatrice was there, lying in the armchair by the window, eyes closed as if she were sleeping. But she wasn't sleeping. Carmen screamed. Livia covered her mouth with her hands. Pedro froze in the doorway. The police arrived in 40 minutes. Inspector Duarte, a robust man with a graying mustache, examined everything, every inch. The windows were locked from inside, all of them. The door had been forced by us, but before that, it was completely sealed. There were no signs of struggle, no objects out of place, nothing broken, nothing stolen. Duarte took me to the hallway. He asked about the security system. I explained everything. Cameras in every hallway, motion sensors, alarms on external doors. He asked for the recordings. We went to the control room on the ground floor. We reviewed the entire night. 11 p.m. Beatrice goes up to her room. 11:15. The bedroom light goes off. After that, nothing. Nobody goes up. Nobody comes down. The hallways remain empty until Carmen appears at 6 in the morning to start the day. Duarte scratched his mustache. He was confused. So was I. How could someone enter a room locked from inside, do what was done and leave without a trace, without appearing on cameras, without forcing any entry? The medical examiner arrived in the afternoon. She did the preliminary examination and confirmed Beatrice didn't have natural causes. There was something in her system, something that shouldn't be there. But here's the strangest part. For that to work, it would have had to be administered recently, very recently, in the last hours before she went to sleep. The house was isolated. Nobody could leave. Duarte gathered all of us in the living room. It was like a scene from those old mystery books, everyone sitting in a circle, looking at each other with suspicion. He started with Raphael. "Where were you last night?" Raphael answered calmly. "Had dinner at 7 with everyone, then went to his office to review contracts until midnight. Slept in his room, East Wing. Can anyone confirm?" No. He had lived alone in the house since the divorce. Livia was next. She was visibly nervous. Admitted she had an argument with her mother during dinner. Something about money, about the inheritance. Beatrice had threatened to change the will again. Livia went up to her room at 10 and didn't leave until the next morning, also alone, also without an alibi. Pedro was different. He was clearly shaken, said he loved his mother, that he couldn't believe what was happening. He had left the house around 8 to meet friends at a bar. Came back at 1 in the morning. The cameras confirmed it. He entered through the main door, went straight up to his room. But here's the detail. Between 1 and 6 in the morning, he was inside the house, and there were no cameras in the bedrooms. Helena, the secretary, had an unreadable expression. She said she was in her room, an annex on the ground floor, organizing documents late. Beatrice had asked her to prepare some important papers. When they asked what papers, she hesitated, then said, "A new version of the will." Beatrice was going to sign it on Wednesday, tomorrow. Duarte asked who would benefit. Helena opened the folder. The new version cut Livia out completely. Everything would be divided between Rafael and Pedro, with Rafael receiving control of the companies. Livia went pale. Carmen was questioned too. She prepared dinner, served everyone, cleaned the kitchen, and went to sleep in her room at 10:30. She lived in a small house at the back of the property. The cameras showed her crossing the garden and not leaving until morning. And me? I was at my house, 200 meters from the main gate. I sleep there every night. My job is to monitor the systems remotely, but I admit, after midnight, I'm out. I trust the alarms to wake me if something happens. No alarm went off. The following days were tense. The investigation moved slowly. Duarte brought a complete forensic team. They took fingerprints of everything, analyzed every hair, every fabric fiber, collected samples from all of us. The problem? All of us had been in Beatrice's room at some recent point. Our prints were everywhere. I started observing people with different eyes. Rafael, always so cold, so controlled. He visited his mother's office the next day and was seen looking at financial documents. When I asked what he was looking for, he just said, "I need to understand the company situation." But there was something in his manner. He seemed to be looking for something specific. Livia started having panic attacks. She stayed locked in her room, cried, screamed that she hadn't done anything. But her anger was real. She had been cut from the inheritance, millions of dollars. Her entire life depended on that money, and Beatrice had taken everything from her. Pedro was the most confusing. He oscillated between deep sadness and a strange calm. One morning, I caught him in the garden, looking up at his mother's room. He mumbled something about finally being free. When I asked what he meant, he just shook his head and left. Helena continued working as if nothing had happened, organized papers, answered calls, kept the house running. But I noticed something strange. She had access to everything, to the keys, to the codes, to the locked drawers. She knew more about that family than any of us. Duarte called me on the 4th day. He had discovered something. The analyses showed that the substance in Beatrice's system had been administered through something she consumed, probably at dinner or shortly after. But here was the problem. Everyone ate the same food. Carmen confirmed it. A single dish for everyone. How could someone have put something only in Beatrice's portion without being noticed? The answer came from an unexpected place. Carmen remembered a detail. Beatrice had a sleeping medicine she took every night. A small bottle that stayed on her nightstand. We went to check. The bottle was there. Duarte had it analyzed. 3 days later, the result. The medicine had been altered. Someone had mixed something with the original content. Now the question was, who had access to Beatrice's room? Technically everyone. The door stayed unlocked during the day. Beatrice only locked it at night. Any of us could have entered during the afternoon and messed with the bottle. But there was a problem with this theory. The hallway cameras. We reviewed everything again. In the last 2 weeks, only 5 people entered that room. Beatrice, Carmen to clean, Helena to bring documents, Livia after an argument, and me when I went to check a sensor that was malfunctioning. Duarte narrowed down the suspects. One of us 4 had done it. He started pressing. Separate interrogations, repeated questions, looking for contradictions. Carmen broke first. She admitted she had seen something strange. 3 days earlier, when she was cleaning the room, she noticed the medicine bottle was in a different position. as if someone had touched it and put it back the wrong way. She didn't think much of it at the time, but now it seemed important. Helena was next to release information. She revealed that Beatrice had told her something in secret. Livia had asked to borrow money to pay gambling debts. A lot of money. Beatrice had refused. It was after that she decided to cut her daughter from the inheritance. Helena had documents proving the debts, millions in lost bets. Livia was confronted. She denied everything initially, then broke down. Yes, she owed money. Yes, she was desperate. Yes, she had fought with her mother. But she swore she hadn't done anything. She cried so much it seemed impossible she was lying. But Duarte wasn't convinced. The evidence pointed to Livia. Clear financial motive. Access to the room. Knowledge about her mother's medicines. She had everything. Duarte was about to make the formal accusation when something happened. Pedro showed up with information. He had found something on his mother's computer, emails, conversations with the lawyer. But they weren't about Livia. They were about Rafael. Beatrice had discovered that Rafael was embezzling money from the company. A lot of money. She was going to report him, was going to take control of everything from him. The new will wasn't to benefit Rafael. It was to transfer power to an administrative board until the internal investigation was finished. Rafael denied vehemently, said Pedro was lying, that he was trying to frame him to keep everything. The brothers almost physically fought right there. Duarte requested computer forensics. It took 2 days. The result? The emails were real. Rafael had an even bigger motive than Livia. He was going to lose everything. The company, the fortune, the reputation. He had much more to lose, but Rafael had a partial alibi. He had made several calls from his office during the night. Phone records confirmed it. Of course, he could have done that and still gone to his mother's room before, but it created doubt. I was going crazy trying to understand. I reviewed the recordings non-stop, looking for something we had missed. A suspicious movement, a shadow, anything. That's when I noticed something bizarre. On the day I entered the room to check the sensor, the hallway camera had a glitch. For exactly 18 seconds the image froze, then it went back to normal. At the time I thought it was just a technical failure, but now it seemed too suspicious. I checked the system logs. The sensor I went to check had been reported as defective by Helena. She had sent a message saying Beatrice complained about a strange noise coming from the smoke detector. I went to check. Everything was normal, but that meant Helena had made me enter that room. She had created a reason for me to be there. I confronted Helena. She was too calm, said she just passed along Beatrice's complaint. There was no way to prove otherwise, but my mind was racing. Helena had access to everything. She knew the security system. She knew my routine. She had the keys. But what would be her motive? She wasn't in the will. She wouldn't inherit anything. Or would she? I asked Duarte to investigate deeper. What we discovered was shocking. Helena wasn't just a secretary. She had been the late husband of Beatrice's lover, the father of Rafael, Livia, and Pedro. This had happened 20 years ago. Beatrice had found out at the time and destroyed Helena's life. Made her lose jobs, reputation, relationships. Then, in a cruel twist, offered her the secretary job, a way to keep her close, to always remember who had the power. Helena had a motive. 20 years of humiliation, 20 years of swallowed revenge. But the concrete proof was still missing. It was Carmen who brought the final piece of the puzzle. She remembered something she had seen but not processed. On the morning we found Beatrice, when everyone was desperate in the hallway waiting for the door to be broken down, Helena had something in her hands. A keychain. Carmen had found it strange because Helena never carried keychains. She used a digital system for everything. Duarte asked to search Helena's room. There they found a key, an old, ancient key. Carmen recognized it immediately. It was the original master key to Beatrice's room, the one that had been replaced by the digital system 3 years ago. The key that was supposedly destroyed, but Helena had kept it, and she knew that, despite the new system, the old mechanical lock was still there underneath, an extra layer of security that Beatrice had insisted on keeping. Helena could enter that room whenever she wanted. Confronted with the evidence, Helena finally spoke. But it wasn't a tearful confession. It was cold, calculated. She explained everything with a frightening calm. She had planned for years, studied substances about how to make it look natural. She messed with the medicine bottle during an afternoon when Beatrice was in the garden. Then waited, knew it would take a few days to take full effect. On the fatal night, she used the master key, entered the room while Beatrice was already unconscious, checked if everything was as planned, then left, locked everything from inside using the internal lock, and exited through the door, closing with the master key from outside. When they asked how she left without appearing on cameras, she smiled. The glitch I had seen wasn't accidental. Helena had technical knowledge. She had worked with Beatrice's husband back when he installed the house's original security system. She knew how to create loops in recordings. 18 seconds were more than enough to cross the hallway. But here's the most brilliant and most disturbing part of her plan. Helena had manipulated all of us. She planted doubts about Livia by revealing the debts. She ensured Pedro found the emails about Raphael. She orchestrated everything so we'd suspect each other while she remained invisible. The motive? It wasn't just revenge. Beatrice had made a secret will years ago when she discovered Raphael's embezzlement, a will that only Helena knew about. If all the heirs were considered guilty or unworthy, the fortune would go to charity. And Helena had positioned herself as administrator of that charity. She would control everything. Duarte arrested her right there. Helena didn't resist. She just looked at each of us and said, "You all deserved it. You lived off her your entire lives and none of you really cared. I just finished what she started years ago when she decided to destroy my life." The house that only locks from inside held more secrets than I imagined. I spent 12 years protecting those walls, those doors, those people. But I never stopped to think that the greatest danger didn't come from outside. It came from inside. From years of resentment, accumulated hurt, patient revenge. Raphael lost control of the company when investigations about the embezzlement advanced. Livia entered rehab for gambling addiction. Pedro sold his part of the inheritance and moved far away, trying to forget everything. Carmen resigned and went to work somewhere else, in a normal house, where doors were just doors. And me. I dismantled all the security systems in that mansion, because I realized that locking everything, controlling everything, watching everything, doesn't prevent what's already inside. Sometimes, the more you try to protect yourself, the more you create the perfect cage for your own demons. The house was sold the following year. A new family lives there now. They don't know the story, don't know what happened in that room on the second floor, and I hope they never have to discover that the safest places in the world can be the most dangerous, especially when you're locked inside with someone who spent years planning your downfall, because in the end, the problem with a house that only locks from inside isn't that something bad can get in. It's that you might be locked with something terrible that was already there all along, waiting, watching, counting the days until the perfect moment to act. You know what this story taught me? That there's no point building high walls if you don't take care of what you plant inside them. Beatrice had the safest house in the world, but she cultivated hate, resentment, and revenge right under her own roof. You can have the best locks, the best systems, the best defenses, but if you treat the people around you with cruelty, you're creating your own enemy. True security doesn't come from steel doors. It comes from how you treat those close to you. Because in the end, people never forget how you made them feel. And sometimes that memory is worth more than any fortune. So wherever you look today, look around you. Think about the people who are near you. Are you cultivating gratitude or resentment? Are you planting kindness or hurt? Because everything you plant today will grow tomorrow. And when that tomorrow comes, you'll want to be surrounded by flowers, not thorns. Take care of your relationships, like you take care of your house. Actually, take care even better, because a house you can rebuild, but a person you hurt may never trust you again. Leave a comment down below telling me what you thought of this story, like the video if you made it to the end, and subscribe to the channel for more stories like this one.